it's the, it's the learning to. This is where you build habits, right? Kind of like the fundamental of the trading 102 is just to map out. It doesn't matter how you want to trade it, what you want to trade against, how you want to set up your trade. Once you have an indicator like the moon indicator who can be your right hand man and verify what's coming up, then you can execute, right? So in the Discord, when we had that call out, 4 hour RSI up, 4 hour green moon, waiting on the RSI to head up. So I let Mad Max know they were just waiting for the 4 hour to head up, and that was at the 1424 mark. So when we look at the chart, what I was doing there was right here at the 1424 mark, we had where the RSI was heading down. And what I wanted to do here was basically see it. That would be right about there. I wanted to see it. I don't want to trade against an RSI, especially a 10-minute. That's kind of where you're using that for the bump, right? So you want that at least to be breaking the 20, heading back up, to where you get momentum with you, right? And this is always where the thing about leverage that people forget. People think that leverage is to take a 1% move and make it a 100% move, right? That's how they think of leverage. But what leverage actually is it's not the jump a trade and quick snipers. What it is it's actually when you understand how to use it properly, it's a patient tool, right? What it does is allows you to be more patient and give away a 1% move to be in the move that has been more confirmation, and then take advantage of the next 1% move and get 50% out of it, but increase your odds of success, right? By waiting for more confirmation, you have the ability to increase leverage to pay you back for what you didn't get. So normally a 2% move, if you're doing a 10x or something, would be 20%. But if you're patient, you can do a 20x leverage, and on that 1% move, still get your 20%. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So that's kind of where, once you have the fundamentals in your head of like how to, see simple steps, right? So for me, when I noticed the 1-2 over here in the moon indicator, it didn't really pop, earlier, I was like, And then I seen how the volume just trended down, right? And then what I looked at was the next time we got a green moon on the 10-minute. Now keep in mind, like I always say, like every time there's a moon, there's supposed to be movement. So I'm looking for this movement here to kind of like, show some life. So when I seen this move up, and then I seen the pullback, right, the same 1-2, all looked good. And then the jump here again, once again, it kind of like, it showed me that it's not breaking the resistance, right? Which will then turn me into where I can go, okay, you know what, I'm in a cluster, right? So if you're not paying attention, you're just kind of waiting for your trade to happen. Now at this point, I'm realizing that I'm in a cluster, right? So I can go back and say, oh shit, I'm in a cluster here. And then I can take this, roll it up and say, okay, here's my cluster, here's my breakout, right? So what I need here is it's now consolidating, right? And when it, oh, you found your burger, dude? You just gonna break into the bag? This dude, come get your dog, babe. He was sleeping. I put his little hamburger. I got him a Whopper Junior. I put his bag by his bed. This dude just got up and started tearing into it. Yeah, what do you do, babe? Get your dog. What are you doing in there? So that's kind of where you kind of look at it and you say, okay, you start to see the weakness, you know what I'm saying, how it's playing out. So that's how I was looking at it, like, okay, it's not doing what it's supposed to do, right? So every time I see it, it's supposed to do something and make a certain type of move. And when it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, then we know what it's going to do, right? It's kind of like how we break it down to like, it's not doing it. It should be going long here, but it keeps running into this issue where it keeps fighting that resistance. So what I did was when I seen that, and I was waiting for this 10 minute to kind of like move up in that section there. That's where I was like, when I seen that double move to the top, that's when I shorted it because I was like, you know what, this is not going to break out here. It's failing, and then I just took that short in that zone there. I was like, after this peak happened here, I was like, all right, I'm taking this short position here because it just didn't have volume. And then I started looking at the moon indicator, and I realized that it just wasn't breaking the 10 threshold. So when it rejected that again, I just took that short, and that's what got us into this short here for River. So very simple short, and we're finally getting our little bounce here, right? So this is what we were talking about earlier. Normally, I was telling Joe G, it's like the reason why we have 30% levels, or we take percentages at certain levels, and also you can kind of like look at your, especially on Bitnex on a 1 minute, you can kind of look over and say, okay, where is there going to be support, right? And at that point, that's normally where I'm going to target a profit-taking moment. And then what I'm going to look for is I'm going to look for what is this? I'm going to look for a bounce off of that. And then once I get that bounce, then I'll re-enter a short position there. And that's kind of where, that's kind of where we would look for this next bounce here, and depending on the market, sometimes you can get a bounce way up to here and take advantage of it again, right? And that's how you would play the double move, right? Because what we're looking for, once again, that's why when you have basic little things, it's not hard to remember, like, all right, I'm going to have a move, I'm going to look for some type of, there should be a support bounce up to here, and then a bigger move down, right? So once you have that in your head, those simple things, you can constantly just analyze something, right? And then from there, it's really just using the moon indicator to kind of like go, it's not doing anything special here, right? So normally here I can look and I can say, okay, obviously the 10 minutes is on the ground. I go to the 1 hour. I can see I'm about to hit a 1 hour moon here, right? 1 hour is closing towards the bottom. Now I can look at my 3 hour to see if it's, losing. And it's starting to bend. So this is starting to build momentum to the downside. And that's why I took that short earlier, just because it's rejecting the 4 hour moon. That doesn't mean it'll stay there. It could run sideways for a second here and then find some momentum here. But in order to do that, it's going to have to start building off of the 15-minute zone, right? And right now we're seeing the 15-minute hasn't, it's getting towards a 27 bottom, which normally is going to create some type of bounce here. But nothing, nothing real smooth here. So I could, I take profits here, especially in River, because River's a very quick moving type trade. But what I'm doing right now is I'm just watching the profit side. I'm seeing if it, as it moves, if it's, staying at that 250 mark. And I got Doge, where I need Doge to stay above the 380 mark. Let's take a look at Doge real quick. And Doge is doing the same thing. They're getting a little bounce in here. But I'm not seeing anything that's like telling me that there's a lot of juice behind this. But like I said, it could start building momentum here. I mean, we could hit a floor. I mean, because remember that the coin is supposed to be going up. Right? Everything kind of points to a long position here. And we might be running into a floor here. So it's, at this point, this is what I'm talking about closing out. You take your last price, close it that way, 100%, last price. And that'll put a limit orders in there. And if the limit order hasn't been hit, then you can just you can adjust that a little bit. Just and all that does is make sure that it closes out at a limit price. So now that that trade's over there, now what I'm looking for is basically um, to find a bounce here, right? And that's really the bounce that we're looking for. And as you go on, it's like if you these are the basic, and a lot of times you can't take and it's gonna pull down on there. There's no volume here. But you have where when you're doing this, what you're trying to do is rinse and repeat, so that as you move forward, these trades become very like easy to see for you. They put Jesus on. I said Jesus loves Bitcoin. I've never seen that before. So happy Easter, guys.
That's the first, man.
That's the first right there. That's the first right there. All right. But yeah, we can see here we're gonna be heading down on this. But like I said, River's a very volatile coin. Now this is something where once it has its move in there, um, yeah, it's more than likely rejecting here. It's gonna fly into that 1 hour spot. But you can tell from there, like you have to be where no matter what, you take those profits in there and you kind of just play that side, because as you start to move along, you're hitting your position, and then the next thing for us here would be seeing some type of jump, right? Some type of 5 minute move. We gotta let the 5 minute play out to see where this kind of like if it has momentum, and then we can take another short somewhere in this position here. And so far that's where we have. If we're looking for it, that gave us a bounce to this 170 something level, but and just being consistent. I mean that's a 30. What do we get on those? 19 on Doge, 67 on River. And we just want this to play out here, because it's always two moves, right? I'm not too concerned about the first move. I want to see the first move, then I want to see a second move, and then I want to see how the third move builds up momentum. But this is where playing those simple first moves and collecting what you got to collect allows you to kind of like see how it's building, right? Doge is still in a upward position here, even though there's no volume here, which is kind of crazy. But that just means that the selling power is kind of like done, and we can tell this by volume, right? So if we look at the 1 hour, that's another thing you guys gotta. When you look at the moon, you see here that our volume's way above the zero line. We're in the 10 threshold. So right now, once you get in those sections there and you see the 1 hour starting to break above the zero line, that's where you can kind of say to yourself, you should be expecting a certain result, right? Cause and effect. So once the 1 hour breaks the zero line and we start to see this, momentum change, this is where, for just kind of like muscle memory, this is where we should see, moves. Now, the reason why we look at these same things over and over, right? That's why we do the 1 hour moon, right? The 1 hour moon should have a certain type of push. The 4 hour moon and the 4 hour up gives us the best momentum. It should have the best pushes, right? So right now, because the market is in a condition where the volume is very low, we're playing it in a way that the odds are in our favor. How do we do that? We trade with the best momentum, which is the 4 hour. We trade with the best possible volume, which is the 4 hour moon. We trade with the best spiking volume, which is that catches most of the early entries, which is the 1 hour moon. All right, so when we have those three things in our play, we should see results like this yellow box all the time. Like that's what we should see. And if you look at Doge and you kind of map that out, you should say, okay, every time I see this scenario, I should be getting a 2% move here, or 1.5. which this is why we play like a 33 or 40x on Doge, and we go for a 30% profit because we're looking for a 1% move out of a 2%, 1.5, 1.7, right? We're playing, the 50% odds on there. But what happens is when you like do this trade with the same steps and the same, systematic style, what happens is you start to see when this box becomes bigger. And that lets you know when the market is changing from a bear market to a basic market, right? To a bull market, right? And when you see this happen, right? And you start seeing the averages hit this top area up here instead, how you're going to execute here is you're going to execute the same way that you've been doing. And the only difference is right now we're playing 33, or let's just say we're playing 30 leverage, 30 to 40 leverage. We're doing a 30% target, and we're doing a 30% stop loss. So that's kind of like the the basics of what we're running here, right? Now, all that happens here is when this starts to actually mature and we're seeing these 1.7 become 2.5s, 3% moves, what we do is we simply come in and say, oh, okay, this market's getting better. We don't change the 33 or 40, right? The only thing we do there is say we'll probably use a 40 more often because that's our high end. And then we, instead of, we don't change our 30% target, right? And we keep our 30% stop loss the same, right? The difference is how we make money here. Yeah, he woke up and went right for the bag. So where we change here is that we might be operating with a $500 bag, during the slower times. Oh, you leave that, baby. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Leave it. Just take his. Deal with that man. So $500 bag on this side. And this is giving us, on the end, we're getting a 150 takeout, on our profit side. The only thing we do is we keep the same flow. Now our risk to reward is actually cut in half because we're getting bigger moves. So now what we want to do is we want to increase our bags, right? So you want to go, if you go double your bag to 1,000, right? Now you're taking home your 300, right? You double your bag to 2,000. Now you're taking home 600, right? So that right there, just by doing that simple process of the bag sizing, which is the proper way to do it, instead of making 150, now you're making 600, right? So now you're 5xing your play. And all you did was pull your bag up, literally 3 times on there. But that's how you actually increase the profits that you're getting, right? Where everyone else, they change the leverage, they change the target, right? And then what happens is that they just keep themselves in the same scenario of risk. It's kind of like when people, it's funny how it all works out, but it's kind of like when people buy houses, right? Like you have somebody who buy a house, $400,000 house, might have a $1,500 mortgage, but they get paid $70,000 a year. Then you get somebody who gets $1.5 million house, and they make $120,000 a year. At the end of the week, they're both in the same area. They both have no money left. It's just one. Just one has a different looking house. So it's the same scenario here. It's just you want to upgrade a little differently. Just increase your bags. So that's the steps we just want to keep in mind. So once we start learning these boxes here, and we see the boxes grow, that's how we know the market's getting better. And then what that'll do for you is when you're looking at your moon indicator, you'll start to realize that this is, kind of like showing you when things are supposed to do breakouts, right? When we have a breakout here and we have a pullback there, that next move should be bigger. And right now we're not getting that. We're getting double tops. And when you see that double top, currently we can take that to the short side. But this will all, as we start to move through the market, when the boxes upstairs get bigger, that means our pushes get bigger. That means how we short changes, and what size bag we use is different. And that's how we build, the momentum up from this area here. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear.
Yeah. So that's why, rinse and repeating over and over. It's like it seems like we're doing something that's like, you're being systematic, but what you're actually doing as you start to do this, you'll start to see all these other things that you've missed before. They'll start to become clear. Why didn't that bull pennant work? Why doesn't this bull flag hit? Why did the head and shoulders fail? Right? Why did that support line break? Right? Like I spend, sometimes I sit there and I just watch TikTok and I'm watching all the charters out there, and it's like, it's all speculative. Like they're just charting the supports and resistance. I'm like, man, you guys still you don't understand the one that you just need the volume. The volume is the key. No one ever talks about why something will happen. It's all based on, what the market makers want you to kind of see is just their patterns. And they're moving on patterns, and they're just waiting. The patterns are just there so that they can see what retail wants to do. And when retail reacts to a pattern, then that's basically signals them what you're paying attention to. And then they just move off that. But it's good to kind of understand where everything is moving, but that's what we want to do. We want to get to where we see the same things over and over, and what we're looking for is the difference in the box. How big is that 1 hour box, right? When it gets bigger and bigger on a specific coin, then the market's changing for that coin. Same moves, different coins. We just start to see the repetition in the size. Let's see what we got here. See right here, so by waiting on this move that I'm waiting on, just puts me in a situation where I can see now we're in a cluster again. So, and this is what we mean by just consolidation. So now we're in another cluster with River, right? And now that I know there's a cluster, right, which is just basically saying consolidation, now I can go to River and I can plot out what my trade would be, right? And we know that we want a 1 hour moon, right? Right now it's blue, so I can't go long here because I got a blue moon. Second thing I want to do is I want to see my 4 hour. Right now my 4 hour is heading down, so I can't go long here because I'm heading down. So what that tells me is more than likely it's going to bounce, and this bounce is going to lead into a short, right? So now what I'm looking for is the top of this push to then take the next short down. And it's fighting right now because we have the 1 hour actually, and it looks like this. See now, so this is what I was saying. See the volume here? The volume is starting to bend on River on the 1 hour, right? Which is more important than the RSI because that's the actual money. That means whoever's buying right now, the buyers, are actually, they're buying pretty big. Where the RSI still kind of, just says that the sentiment is that there's less buyers than there are sellers. But the buyers are outweighing the sellers at this moment, right? You guys see that? Does that make sense for you?
No, I'm not following that part.
Okay. So
where
here,
you're saying it's showing like the volume is going down. So how's the money going in?
yeah. So here, so when you look at the moon indicator, right, the orange line, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times the orange line is going to let you know whether or not what's happening is actually it's at a certain percentile that would actually change price, right? So when I'm looking here, what I'm looking for is the orange line heading up. I need it to head up at least on the 10 minute, and the 15, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we're getting it there. So right now we're getting a nice little RSI with a moon movement. So we're getting volume here, right? Now
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the RSI won't move in the same at the same time, and you'll see the moon indicator move faster, right? That's a sign of
Mm-hmm.
a lot of money coming in from small buyers versus the 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 masses, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where you can kind of turn around and say, "Oh, this is gonna this is whales coming. These are bigger buyers." That's how you can see a floor. Right now, they're moving in the same section there, so
Mm-hmm.
we're kind of like just you know, there's no there's no floor yet, right? That's why when you start watching that orange line, you can start like seeing the movement a little bit quicker. Now see here, see how the RSI here was going up here, but the
Mm-hmm.
volume was still sideways.
And they look like they're running almost parallel to each other.
Yeah, here. Okay. So the RSI, these are one, two. These are two candles, right? So you have the RSI starts up here, right?
Mm-hmm.
The orange line went sideways. The next orange line should go here because the next RSI goes up again. See,
Mm-hmm.
it's making higher highs. And then the
I
third
got you.
RSI goes here, right? Now, if I look at my orange line, the moon line, none of those orange lines went up, right? It went to the next candle
Mm-hmm.
before it started up, which was basically this one here. That's the one that printed the up,
Mm-hmm.
that one there. So for me, when I look at that, the RSI is moving up, but the money's not there, right? Sign of a weak move. See what I'm saying? Now I'm expecting a bounce, right? But
Uh-huh.
this is also telling me that the bounce I'm expecting is probably what I think, which is going to be just limit orders, people thinking that this is the bottom, and then as soon as they get it up to a percent that the people who didn't sell, because remember, what happens is the people who didn't sell, the people who all thought this was about to go up, which everybody did, and they got caught on this move here, right?
Uh-huh.
And you can see where they like when it every time it bounced, people sold. It bounced, they sold, and then finally people were like, "Oh, this shit's going down," and then they sold, right? You still got people
Mm-hmm.
that were holding. So when this kind of moves up to this area up here, and they get up to the percentage that they want to see, it might even be that level right there, 27, right? Then these people are going to start. They've got sell orders set at these, just like people have,
I got you.
yeah, just how they have buy limit orders. Well, sellers have sell limits, so they're like, man, if it bounces back up here, I'm selling, right? And that's why a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times we get those double moves. So here we're finally getting a bounce, and then from there we need to see that pullback, and then that pullback should kind of settle on that support area there if it's going to continue, right? Now, right now,
So you're
everything.
waiting. Are you waiting for a blue moon right now?
Oh, so I mean, we're kind of already in the play, right? So you have
Mm-hmm.
um, your 1 hour blue moon play. You have your 4 hour um, blue moon short that happened way over here, right? Now, what happened? The reason why this is the second leg is because after that blue moon, which is our original short, which is here, right? After we had that big short, there's supposed to be a bounce, which is what we just went through. Then from there,
Mm-hmm.
it failed to make a green moon. See, right here, it was supposed to make a green moon. See,
Right.
but because it didn't, then it faded back down. Now, since this is the second move in here, so Elliott waves have 5 moves. All right, so now we're in 4, 5, and 6, which is normally simply consolidation, right? Meaning that the people who were selling already sold, the people who didn't know they were selling sold on the bounce, and now everyone who bought at the bottom, either lost or they're caught where they have to hold, and now it's a decision, right? So now it's consolidation where people are either going to keep or think that this is a good bottom and start buying into it, or the people that bought are just going to take, their stop loss is going to hit 20, 30, 40, 50%, whatever it is, and or they're going to decide they're getting out of here because volume hasn't returned. So it's kind of like no man's land, right? So for us, what we're waiting for is for the basics, right? One is that you have the RSI down, so this is still, a possible short, but we're also, you're playing that bounce into that short. The second thing is we can't go long until the RSI, starts to head back up, and we need a green moon, right? So the minimum green moon that causes, river to bounce is a green moon, right? So on the 1 hour. So the minimum to even consider going long here would be a 1 hour green moon. And we don't have that yet, right?
Right.
So more than likely, the momentum is going to play the 4 hour RSI and continue down, right? Because we just had where it tried to break up here, and it wants to break through. Yeah. And now it's starting to. This is normally where you would start playing an additional short here, which I guess we'll play the 4 hour here. And now what we're doing is we're just playing this bounce here because we're playing the 4 hour down, right? Because it's not showing a lot of volume here that it wants to, continue. The only thing we're really waiting for here is the 1 hour to kind of go down, and then the next thing is once this was another thing I talked about, how you can see that blue line right there. Once that blue line makes its move there, then you'll have kind of like a spike or drag down, which will let you know how strong it is, right? But right now we're just sitting on limits.
What do you mean by that? Spike or drag down?
Yeah, so it's just like when you see a moon, you're going to expect a certain move, right? So in this next hour, which is the next 40, 50 minutes, and it creates this next line, it's either going to be a sideways line saying that volume is staying steady, or it's going to head down saying that, it's going to continue down, right? And that will cause a downward drag to the coin, to the price. And then that price is how we can determine how strong this is, right? Now, if it goes down and the price does a divergence where it's still going up, well, then we know we're in a bad situation because the volume is returning. But so far, we're kind of, this is where as you start to, go through this, you'll start to see that part of the game, the value, right? You'll be more into the value. But our basic steps, right, is telling us that this is kind of like a no man's land anyways, because on the 4 hour, we had the 4 hour blue moon. That's our down. That's our big one that we had, right? This was the bounce that happened. Once that bounce happened, then we have an automatic third move, which is the next pullback. Now, normally, the third pullback should at least retouch the support or go further, right? So right now, that move is kind of like slow bleeding, right? People are trying to hold this level. And that's where earlier today when we seen the other things, it looked like this coin wanted to go up. But in reality, the move that it's looking to make is to retest this lower level here at 1047 or even go further below that, right? But it's finding...
And if that goes lower, that would kind of be like a divergence, right?
Yeah, because...
if the RSI is pointing up...
Yeah, but right now we
like
don't have that. Yeah, right now we're the 4 hours working down. Yeah, the 4 hours working down, the volume's working down. So everything is kind of still in a scenario where it should continue down here. There's just a lot of people who are, kind of what we've seen earlier where it looked like, I mean, if you charted this, right, that's the weirdest thing. If you charted this, the chart says it should be going up, right? That's kind of where, when you see here, and you take, this is what I was talking about on a bigger time frame. I expect the indicator, this algo indicator, to be a little bit off and be looking into a short. But when I go to a 1 hour, this is where, I would expect the indicator to be a little more set up to where it's reading a little better. So this is looking at it. It's now that this is kind of hit it. It's looking for a entry point at 1709, but that would be somewhere off of this area here. It didn't hit the entry point. It just started down, so it missed its entry. Now, if we go to the 10-minute, this is where it should be able to read a little better, right? And if you can see, there's now these lines here, these charted lines. These are not. I don't chart these. I use algo to basically create these. So this is kind of what you do, Joey C, is you kind of like draw with the momentum. So right now, the momentum shows that it wants, to head up. And that's where you can see here, it's looking for an entry here at 12.14, and it's looking to go to 16.33. Now it's reading it a little better here, but it's showing that the momentum wants to kind of go up. Where we know that we have a 1, 2, 3, we've seen the 1, we see the 2, and now we're looking for that third move down, which is this here. So it's kind of like, all right, we're in the middle of, this is what we consider no man's land, because the third move down didn't hit the support area it was supposed to, which would have been about here, 11.14. It had a mid bounce in between there. So a bunch of retail investors kind of got into a whatever they were charting, which makes sense because it all looks like it wants to bounce. And now they've created, instead of the 1, 2, 3, now they have a 4, 5 move, right? Which is the end of an Elliott wave, right?
I was going to say, I don't think it's done going down yet.
No. I mean, there's no volume. I mean, it's fighting.
Yeah.
It all looks like it's supposed to go up. But that's why charting is a little bit kind of like it's, if everyone learn, so that's where, when I watch, that's what I was saying today, I was watching I always hop on channels and people charting, and I never hear that they're always explaining, where something's at, and, what it should hold. They never know if it will. They never know why it won't. And they're just kind of like charting the lines. And then people start trading off of that philosophy, right? When you have to have confirmation of the philosophy, like what makes that more, what increases the law of averages that will happen that way, right? And that's the money. That's the value. That's why the moon indicator is so important, because this allows us to kind of like see what happens. So you see how we have a green moon here? Now, normally on a green moon, and once you start trading this a little bit more, this is the green moon, right? So we get a green moon here, and then we see a spike, right? You see that spike there? So now we have this spike that's happening. Now, because we're just kind of like, this is the first time I'm really charting river and I'm looking at it, but now I know that when, the green moon comes, I'm working with, on river, it's a pretty good spike. It's about a 3% move from top that candle to another. It's about 2%, right? But this green moon hasn't finished. But when this green moon finishes, I will have a top to bottom scenario for this particular, candle. And I will know like what a green moon normally does for river, right? And the next time I see it, let's say that this is the top of this ends up being the box. And then from here, it doesn't do anything better than this, and then it shorts from there, right? But I'll know what river's 10-minute moon looks like. And the next time I see it, right, I would expect it to produce, right, cause and effect. I would expect it to produce the same type of movement. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, that also tells me, as market conditions change, and I start to see this box get bigger, now I know that my market conditions changing and the coin is changing, right? Because if I'm tracking 2 or 3 coins and I'm seeing that happen on 2 or 3 coins, then I'm aware that the volume of the market's actually getting better. So when I go look at my moon indicators and I see that they're producing these call outs, now I can see what those call outs produce. That allows me to also like understand, like you see here, it's see how the 30-minute here is bending.
Mm-hmm.
And so River's starting to, slowly build momentum here, right? And that's where if you looked at the chart, we'd be looking here, we would be, with that scenario, we would be expecting the price to do better. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens is if it stays in this range here, paper hands will sell and market makers will sell because it's not at a price that brings in value. So market makers are better off just wiping out their positions and then letting everyone, panic and sell or cost average buy, which most people can't afford to do. But they just wipe their positions out and say, okay, let's bring this down, to whatever, 20, 30%, so that we can start a new level and then we'll work up from there. Because people don't see this as a position that's, there's not enough volume here. So they have to entice you by making it a better price.
I was gonna say, it sounds like they're basically just doing what we're doing, but on a bigger scale with bigger bags.
That's all they're doing. Right? And what you're doing here is you're learning how to trade as a market maker. Right? Mm-hmm. So it's understanding what the chart says, understanding what everyone thinks should happen, but then seeing that the money isn't there and then going, it's not producing the result it's supposed to. So people are going to panic, right? Paper hands are going to come in, right? And then, market makers will sell on that and start driving. They're momentum traders too. If you're selling, they'll drive the selling. Because the lower they can get you to sell, the better, because all they have to do, they're trying to make 20, 30%. So if they're looking at a coin and they're running, a certain leverage, right? And they're like, okay, from this position here, if it goes, say where they're running normally they do 5x, right? So for them, they need this type of space. They need a 10x move, 10 to 20% of their basic moves, right? Most of the time, they're going to want to see a 20% move. So if they can get you to create a 20% move, which simply returns to the lowest current high where it was right there, then they're okay with driving this down and restarting. Because now they don't even have to go after highs. All they have to do is go after the lower lows that are being built from the floor. It makes it a lot easier for them because they're not asking the coin to do something it hasn't done in the last 2 weeks. They're asking it to do something it literally did this week already. So they know the money exists.
Right.
Because from here to here, that's their money, right? And that's why you see once they hit if you measure this out, like it's probably a 20% move. So here's the floor, money makers come in, there you go, 25 to 30%. That's all they want.
Dude, it's the same, like you said, it's the exact same thing we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly.
Like they're cool with their 20%, just like we're supposed to be set at our 30%. It's as long as you keep the emotion in the math, it sounds and looks simple.
Yeah.
But that's
it just comes with repetition because
turn the emotion off.
Yeah. Turn the emotion off and realize this is a mathematical game.
Yep.
Oh, it said let me in the chat. I must have the chat on small. Let me see. Let me in the chat, boys. But that's all it is. That's why like we're trading at a level that the market makers are trading, right? We want 20 to 30%. That's the goal. FOMO gives us 50, 60, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But the way to be safe is just trade with the guys who are deciding how the market's going to play out.
So when I see these guys post in the chat, where they're like, I don't know, 60%, 80%, 120%, stuff like that. How are they riding out? What are they taking like profit at 30% and then letting the rest ride?
Yeah. So what you do is you just adjust your stop losses, right? So 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 basically, let's say you have a 7 out of 10. Let's just say you have a 5 out of 10, and what you do is to increase your, your break, because you're trying to win. Normally, it's you want to get 5 out of 10 wins at 30, and your stop loss is 20, right? And what you're doing is as you start to make your moves, and you see profits get up to 20%, you move your stop loss into entry, right? So if it does go the other direction on you, you end up kind of like breaking even there, right? And depending on the trade, and you start to move. So what they do is once their trade, they see their trade building momentum as they're watching it. What'll happen is they'll decide that they'll say, okay, you know what we're going to do is once I get to 25 and I see it's picking up momentum, I'm just going to move my target to 60, and then once I break my 30, I'm going to move my stop loss to my entry point. And then when I get to 40 and 50, I move it to 20, right? So they start, no matter what, they're taking 20. And if it keeps running and they see that the volume is starting to move in their direction, then they increase the target, right? But this is where you have to. That's why we have a maximum of 100, right? And then that way, if you're at 60 or 70, you maximum 100, and you sit there and say, okay, no matter what, I'm taking 50. You know what I mean? Because you got to have where you want, you don't want to have where you're constantly pushing and pushing because you're giving away. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's why we also teach the 1, 2, 3, because once you see certain momentums happen, it's like, all right, there's only so much. You know what I'm saying? But this also, like I said, right now, it's keeping it basic where it's like you're just trailing it up, and you're like, all right, I'm going to go for 60. It's at 45. My stop loss is at 35, and it is what it is. It's either 60 or 35. Right? Now, as time moves, and you start to see the volume play differently, and the markets start to change, then you'll be able to know when to actually mathematically take risk, not emotionally.
Yeah, you take a calculated risk.
Yeah, exactly. But that comes with a little bit of time. But this time around, what we're doing is we're staying very fundamentally sound on the basic, so that as it continues to go through, when things change and things get better, it's not just winging it, right? It's controlled madness.
Yeah.
Right now, we just want to work through the steps of, okay, let's see, and that's the beauty of when you see someone post a 1-hour moon, a 4-hour RSI, a 4-hour moon, right? Then we can go look at it and say, okay, here's what we have, here's an entry we would take, here's the result from that trade. Okay, this is what was made. Boom, right? Now we have results. And that way people can see it and go, okay, that worked out. Then we also have where moments today, like when I seen the river, because he posted a 4-hour moon and we were waiting on the 10-minute reset, it was an opportunity to learn that, hey, it's that moon reset is showing weakness, not strength. Right? Something that normally we don't see. And then we're able to take a short instead. And that's the difference in how we as we start to develop and grow, it's the same steps. Now you just learn the little in-betweens, like, oh yeah, I didn't see that volume on there. And then you build from there. But that's it. I mean, it's just the basics. So here this is just a no man's side where we already have our pump, we had our push, and we already got a pullback. So could this go up from this spot? Yeah, they could probably go up from here because we already had our pullback. It just didn't retest the support line. And actually, people are buying it a little bit higher, and so the liquidity sweeps are already kind of over, and now River's in the section of building off of the 15-minute moons etc. Because we just went through a 10, we had a little pump. Now we're getting to a 15. If that 15 rejects and starts to head down instead of making a moon, well, then we know we're still in a weak position, right? If it hits, then we're moving on to our next move, which is the 30. Now I'm not seeing. See, this is what I was talking about here. So you see here, and when's the next 30? We get 3 minutes, right? So right here, you have the moon indicator where it's still heading down. You see. But if we pull up the indicator, the RSI, we can see that the RSI is heading up. So to me, that's just it's not as strong as it's appearing to be because the moon. Okay, so you see the RSI right there. See how it's bent up right there.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah. So now when I go to the moon indicator, it's bent down. It's not even sideways. So right there, it just kind of lets me know, like, all right, we're getting somewhere, but we're not like it's not overbearing right now. Now, once again, it's not. I'm not emotionally connected. I'm not saying, okay, I'm going to jump this trade because the RSI is on, it's on its way up. I know that in order to make a trade, I need a green moon, right? So it just removes the doubt of like where can you make a trade? Can't make a trade here. Why? There's no green moon on the 1 hour, which is the minimum. Does that make sense? So there's not a lot of
follow the rules.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of things that we have to really think about. We're just watching the basic here, right? And the basic for me is the next 1 hour green moon comes, then I have an opportunity for a long. Currently, I don't, right? And I already took advantage of that second move down, and there was a bounce came early, so I took my profits because I was already at 60%. So I'm already up. I was only expecting 30. See what I'm saying? That's where you say to yourself, I don't need to be greedy here. I've already hit my 60. I only wanted 30. I'm already up.
Yeah, that's where I feel like to really grasp this, I'm gonna have to make myself like not a to-do chart, but like a checklist. Like, boom, it's got to hit the 4 hour before I can go to the next step, to the next step, to the next step, and like to just make it like idiot-proof in the beginning.
Yeah.
Just so I can just get the pattern and remember and not like miss a step or something. Because that's what I've done before. Like, think I got all the steps, and then I'm like, oh, shit, I missed that one.
It's like a sticky notes.
Uh-huh.
It's like you have your sticky notes there, right? And Joe knows about that because Joe's seen a moon happen. Joe had all these things happen, but he waited. I think it was like a couple hours for the 10-minute to become an entry. But what he didn't do is that when the entry was coming around, he didn't recheck the 1 hour.
Uh-huh.
And the 1 hour started down on him. Right? So for us, it's kind of like this. You want to just kind of have this. All right? So long, right? You need a 1 hour green moon. Volume, right? Confirmation. Now what that means is, as long as you have a 1 hour green moon, you at least have volume confirmation. Right? That's like the basic. Now for momentum and sentiment, which is the people, right? This is where we need a 4 hour RSI up. Right? Now if you want to confirm the strength of it, then you add a 4 hour moon.
And that's for long term, like a longer term.
Yeah, trading with the momentum and trading with the best possibilities is really like what we're, trying to do here. You want to put everything in your favor.
And you want to first find your 4 hour green and then look for your 1 hour green. And then after your 1 hour green, you go find a 15-minute or a 10-minute.
Yeah, then you have your other steps, right? So this is basically anytime. These are just like when you have your like your strategy 1, right? Strategy 1 is basically the live trade, right? What are the things that you do for the live trade? So a live trade is simply, it's kind of like these down here are, let's say we call them rules, right? The rules of a long, right? So if I know the rules for my long is at least a 1 hour green moon, and I want momentum on the 4 hour RSI or the sentiment. And right now we're starting with that because what's happening is there isn't a lot of support or confirmation on that side for smaller time frames right now because the volume's kind of slow, right? And once you have the bigger picture of the bigger moves, then these moves will basically help you see be more patient. And then once the markets start to change, then we'll be able to go to 2 hour options, right? It'll be the same step. It'll just, instead of a 4 hour, it'll be a 2 hour, right? The only thing that changes is the time frames. So strategy number 1 is, what's my live trade, right? So currently you want to trade with momentum, right? So that means you need a 4 hour RSI up. Okay, that's the first thing I'm going to need for my momentum, right? That's my momentum part of my trade. Now, that's also sentiment, right? Trading with the masses, right? That's what I need. Now, the next part of it is value. And for your volume part, this is where you're going to tie in and say, I need a 1 hour green moon. So those two things right there complete a strategy 1, which is, if there are 4 hour RSI up, I've got momentum and sentiment. Is there a 1 hour green moon? Clarifying volume. Okay, those are two things that I need. Now, strategy 2. Okay, which is basically your entry. Now this is where you go and you can use the 10 minute, the 5 minute, right? And you're going to do some type of green moon, right? Reset, either on the 5 or 10. And then from there, you want to trade with the momentum. Once again, the momentum, right? So the 10 minute and the 5 minute green moon reset is you just trading with the volume moving your direction. You're just allowing a reset to happen so that you don't get wicked if you're early, right? The second part is, okay, I'm trading with, I want to trade with my best momentum. So I want the 10 minute RSI reset, right? Meaning that it goes up, goes down, and then back up again. Now I'm trading with the momentum of the 10 minute RSI headed up. I'm trading with the 10 minute, 5 minute green moon reset, getting rid of possible wicks, etc. And that kind of like puts you in a situation where you're all set up there. Now, the rules here is this, right? You can set up a rule, the 1 hour RSI heading up, right? 1 hour green moon volume confirmation for momentum, 4 hour RSI up, right? That right there are just basic rules that you can have on your sticky. And that's how you can just kind of like look at when you're going to do a long, right? So the basic is, my strategy is I need a live trade. I need a 4 hour RSI up. I need the volume on the 1 hour green moon. Okay? Now, you can, I guess the rules, maybe putting the rules in the middle would be better so that you understand before you move to an entry, you have the rules. So now that I have a live trade, right? Now that I have a live trade, now I have rules, right? So now the rules are, live trade is happening. I need the 1 hour RSI heading up. I need a 1 hour green moon, which I already have because that confirmed on my first strategy 1. And my RSI heading up, all that's good. Now, if this all stays the way it's supposed to stay, then my next entry is going to be on my 10 or 5 minute green moon reset with the 10 minute RSI headed up. And that right there is basically your long position currently. Now, we go to river. First things first, RSI, looking to head up. So we're getting to a possible scenario where the 1 hour is going to be headed up. So the next thing we're going to need is a 1 hour green moon, right? Just to, validate possible long, right? Once that happens, to trade with better momentum, better, the masses, we need the 4 hour headed up. And the ideal would be
when you choose.
Go ahead.
When you choose your leverage, how do you choose your leverage on your trade?
Well, I mean, so first of all, the basic is this, right? We always want to trade a trade that has fundamentals, right? So when we're trading a trade, this is kind of like the fundamentals of a trade, right? So a trade is the basics, right? So you're going to want a trade that averages 1.5 to 4% moves, right? By having that, that allows me to say that I'm going to run a 30% leverage and go with a 30% target and a 30% stop loss. Because if I'm averaging a trade from 1.5 to 4%, that means I only need 1% on a 30x leverage to get to where I'm going, right? And if I'm low out of there and I'm saying I'm getting 5 out of 10 trades, right? Once I have the average, say like the average move, right? So I can look at the average move to clarify the 1.5 to 4%, make sure that's correct. Then I have to clean up the entry so that I'm now winning 7 out of 10. And then from there, I can use, at that point, the leverage to make the adjustment. Maybe by simply going to 35% leverage, right? Increases my wins by 1 or maybe even 2. But once I have the data, I can make adjustments. That's why when we start to build a trade, we have to look at the trade properly. Like, so for instance, today, right? I went to, there's Algo's finally coming down here. I'm looking for the 2 hour blue moon. So I went to, what was that coin? Hyper, right? So let me pull up Hyper real quick. I'll show you what I mean. And this just came because I'm pulling up different coins and I saw some people charting Hyper and they were like posting it like Hyper, Hyper, Hyper. And I was like, all right. So I put Hyper up and I put up a chart of Hyper. And then when I looked at their chart, I was like, this is actually a shitty coin. All right. So when I
I'm
pull
not
up,
seeing your screen if you're trying to show.
yeah, I'm going to pull you guys up in a second. So now what I did was, there's Hyper. I'm just going to do window. There you go. So then what happened was I pulled up Hyper and I started looking at the movements, right? And the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a quick test, right? So one of the tests is we like to see a 1 hour green moon, right? So here I can go to the 1 hour green moon and then I can just measure that out right there, right? So that's one box. And then I can see again, here's a 1 hour green moon here, right? Then I got another 1 hour green moon here so far. I can just kind of like back test to see, here's another 1 hour green moon here. and another 1 hour green moon here, right? So I can see all these little areas here, and it just allows me to take a quick assessment of what happens when I see a 1 hour green moon. Now remember, the 1 hour green moon is normally a pretty good indicator of value, right? That makes sense? So now I got 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
4, 5, 6, 7 areas. You know, you can do 10 if you want to. 7, 9, all right, 10. All right. Now that I got that in there, now I can open it up here and go, okay. So really what I'm going to do here real quick is say, okay, when I get a 1 hour green moon, if I'm trading there, right, out of the 10 times that it showed up, what are the greatest moves here? Then I can go here and say, okay, that's a 2% move, right? Then I go here, and it's about a 2% move. Then I go here, and it's about a 2% move. Then I go here, and it's less than 2%, right? Then I go here, and I'm working at about 2% again, right? So now I'm going here, and I'm like, okay, that's less than 2%. So right now I'm averaging 2 to 1%, right? And then we have this move here, which is actually a good move, but it's a 10% move, but that's 1 out of 7, right? So then we go down here, and we're like, oh, 1.5%, right? Now, what did I say before? When you have a trade, you want to have an average of 1.5 to 4%, which means if you do 10 trades, you need 10 trades to have at least 3 or 4 that do 8%. You need 3 or 4 that average 5%, and then the other ones can average 2%. But out of these 10 trades, right, we kind of got beat up there. Now I could turn around and go, okay, well, all right, let me take a look, and I can see this section here, right? And I could look at Hyper and go, okay, look at this massive move, right? And then I want to find another massive move like that and quickly assess what makes these massive moves actually important. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my 4 hour, right? Because the 4 hour is going to tell me, you know, sentiment, movement, all that shit. Here, I can see that I got a 4 hour moon, a 4 hour moon. This 4 hour moon did nothing. But what this was here is that, remember we talk about the breakouts. So when Hyper has a breakout of the 4 hour above the 10 threshold and it retests, the retest is normally massive. You see that? Now if I go over here, it's the same scenario. When the 4 hour breaks the 0 line, we get a big move. Then there's a retest, right? And then from that retest, there should be another move, which we get here. And let's see. So now I can see like where when I'm getting those, you know, when I'm breaking the 0 threshold on the 4 hour, it's the only place, if you look here, it's the only time that I'm getting movement. Does that make sense? Can you see that now? So for
When you're breaking the 0 or you're breaking the 10?
no, breaking the 0. When the 4 hour breaks the 0 line,
Right.
is the only time that volume becomes actually relevant for Hyper. So for this coin, it doesn't fit any of our normal setups that we have right now, because this one's completely based on the 4 hour value. So it wouldn't, our 1 hour moons don't actually mean anything unless the 4 hour volume is above 0. Does that make sense? So for me, that's kind of like, that's not it's not giving enough to take the risk. So I wouldn't really build this particular trade because it doesn't, you know, doesn't pay like it should. That's why I put on there Hyper we don't trade. And there's there's our river giving up. Yeah. Way to be, river, way to be. But that's what I was saying. So when you say, like, how do we know our leverage? Well, the leverage is mathematic, right? First thing you do is you build a trade that has a 1.4 to 4% move average. Then you incorporate a 30 by 30 by 30. Then you do 5 trades, clean up the entry to make it where you're 7 out of 10, right? And then once you do that, then we're back down to where we were talking about earlier, is how to, and here's your here's how you build a trade. But then we're back down to that list we had earlier, the how you take an entry and you build your bags. So you go from making 150 on your money to making $600, and you're still doing the same 30%. That makes sense? Everything is mathematic, systematic trading, right? I'm never outside of my systematic trading, and that's it. See, even though all that was showing momentum, I know that I cannot go long on river because I don't have a green moon. You see how easy that is?
Here's a question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You don't have a green moon. So when it goes blue, why does the moon line go straight up?
So it's like a relief rally. Sometimes it don't go that high. Sometimes it go flat. But normally what it does is it's taking the volume that's being sold, but there's going to be limit orders. When something heads down, it hits limits.
Right.
All right. So most of the time when a coin is getting exhausted, it's going to hit limit orders along the way. That's why a lot of times I like to see that, depending on the time frame, I like to see the blue go up, and then the next time it prints down is when I'll take an entry, right? Because that's the weaker part of that move.
I see.
It's confirming.
So
that,
don't.
Yeah.
It's best not to get into the moon right away. You wait for that thing to point down.
So
that's why we kind of go to the lower time frame.
Yeah. So just like I told Joey the other day, right? It all comes down to this: how do you short, right? The short goes like this, right? So if you're sitting on a 1 minute, 10 minute, whatever, the moment I'm thinking I'm going short, I'm going to buy the bounce, right? So it's almost like waiting for the bounce, right? So we waited when we were going short here. We wait for that bounce, right? Doesn't matter which bounce you take. If you let that bounce happen, right, and then you start to see where it levels out and the price starts to go level, right? Even if we miss this and it doesn't really bounce for us, then it comes down and bounce a little bit here. We want to trade into the momentum of what's happening, right? But the only thing that can wick you out or take you out of your trade is a bounce. So I'm already accepting that there's going to be a bounce. Now I'm just waiting for it to happen. Now the more you get better at tracking a trade, inside of like this, cluster, as it starts to move, I'm realizing that here's my first cluster, here's a lower high, then it starts to build momentum, then it gets rejected, then here I'm like, oh, this is short. And that's why we enter that short.
Mm-hmm.
Now if you miss that, then your next entry would be right here, because right now it took its bounce and now you're waiting for it to kind of roll out. So then we would just look at a 10 minute and start to take the 10 minute down, right, or the 5 minute down. See how the 10 minute RSI is heading down right there?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to ride the momentum. I want to ride with the 10 minute down.
Gotcha.
Right? I always want to be at the peaks of whatever could be against me, so that I can, I can withstand something, right? But you also have to be aware, like, once again, we already have the 4 hour pull down, right, which was the big one. We have a bounce that already happened, and this next move here, this is our third move down, right, which is why it's choppy. That's why we're getting into all this, craziness here, is because after it has a big move down and it bounces, most people buy the retest, right? So this is where it gets choppy because so many people they're picking different levels here, and we're just going sideways. But if it doesn't push the way it's supposed to push, then the people who are in those positions will hit their stop limits, and the people that are in there who don't see it happening will then sell and reposition on a lower level down here because the momentum failed. Big money's not getting in here right now because big money's waiting for the 4, 5, 6 move because they're seeing what people can do. Now, if the people come in here and they're like, yeah, and they push it way up here, then the people who didn't sell will now sell it down to here, and now we have a retest for a run, right? That didn't happen. They pushed, but they failed to break this cluster right here, which basically let big money know, oh, there's no money here. So what does that mean? That means they need to take this down.
Right.
They're in no
There's
hurry.
more opportunity to buy down lower.
Well, once again, we go back to the 20% move, right? They want to move to 20%. So if they go back up to the recent top, right, and they kind of move it around here, that's the top right there. So if they go back to the top of that channel, which normally they're not going to target the top of the channel, they're going to target the bottom. So if that bottom, they're looking for a 20% move to that bottom. So their entry point is somewhere around 1024, 1028. Which if you look across, that's your support line right there. That was
Right.
That's the recent low. So they just want to target that low right there. So that's what I say. That's why in trading 102, we're covering all the way people's trades so that you can understand what everyone's thinking. Right? And once you understand what everyone's trying to do, and then you realize they can't do it, and then you just cross-reference with your moon indicator, you're like, oh, you guys don't have no money. Once you have that, you can piece together the move that is going to happen because paper hands, are going to prevail. And that's it. So once you see this, once you rinse and repeat this over and over, you're like, oh, right? I want you guys to get to a point where so like here, this is a $700 trade. Right? It's only 13%, but it's $100. Now, normally we get this up to 800 or 1,000. Now we're at about 150. It's a quick take, right? So you go in there and say, all right, I'm not too worried about it. I made my $100. Boom, boom, I'm closed. I'm not worried about business. Right? And you start getting to where you're maximizing those small moves. Like, all right, know when I'm closing because I'm in the tail end of this, right? I don't want to battle with indecision, right? Everyone's deciding what they want to do here. It's a clusterfuck, right? So I'm just going to let this trade replay out. So now I'm going to go back and go, okay, I need a green moon. I need all this. Now I'm back to my steps. No emotions. I'm already done. I pulled $1,000 out of Doge and River in the last hour. I'm good. Now I'm just waiting for the trade to reset. Do I care if it goes up from here? Nope. Do I care if it goes down? Nope. I'm waiting for the big money to decide that we're doing something. I was already in the big short over here anyways, and then I got the bounce and I got my second short. So I've already got the two trades that I wanted to happen there. It already happened. So now that all that happened, I got to wait for the reset. And that's really what it comes down to. No emotions, just waiting for it all to play out. But it's good to know what, like I said, as you start to watch to see what is possible or what is going to happen. you know, it puts you in a situation where you at least know what everyone's trying to do, and when they're failing to do it, then you can look at your moon indicator and be like, all right, they can't do what they want to do, but I see now there's a reversal because the volume is starting to clarify the fucking ruckus, the craziness. And that's where we want to be, systematic. Now it is hitting its 10-minute 27 line. So, you know, this is a floor. But, like I said, I don't want to, you know, I got to have some green moons here. I don't have any green moons. I don't have a 45. I don't have an hour. I don't even have a 30. You know, if I look at my 30, it's starting to bend, so it's starting to come around. But then I got to look at volume, right? I want volume on the 10-minute above the 10 threshold. We're not even there yet. So there's a lot going on here that I can cross-reference myself to just be like, all right, I'll come back in an hour, 2 hours. You know, and if all these things go up, like we're seeing the 10 minutes to the top, starts to come down, what I'm watching for here is during this 10-minute right top, I want to see how far this comes down. If the 10-minute RSI goes all the way down and then it starts up again and it's starting to make higher highs, right, then I know we're building some strength here. Right? There's enough money in there that they're holding. And then from there, I just want to see a bigger time frame do the same thing. I want to see a 30-minute go up and come down, right? Because remember, what am I waiting for? I'm waiting for one up, second move down confirmation, then I take the third move. That makes sense? So those are the things you got to be saying in your head. I want to see a 1-2 confirmation of what is happening and then validate it with the moon indicator and then go through my steps of how I trade this. 1 hour moon, 4 hour RSI up, right? The basics. And right now we're using the 4 hour, like I said, because the volume of the market is very low right now. So the moves that should happen, even though they're charted out, momentum, bull pennants, bull flags, dojo can't, whatever, there's no money to finish the move. It can't execute. So I'm putting 4 hour rules into place so that I'm not trapped. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, if this 30-minute pushes up like we're supposed to, this is what I want to see. I want to see that 30-minute go up, and then when it goes up, if it decides to come down somewhere around here, I'll probably take another short into there. Because eventually what happens is, just like what happened to you the other day, while you were waiting for the 10-minute moon to happen, the 1 hour went up and then started heading down. This could happen here, where the 1 hour goes up and then decides to go down. And then all of a sudden,
it gets rejected.
Right. So that's what you should have learned from the trade the other day. Not that you lost it, but that you could go look at it and say, that's how I knew it reversed.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you start seeing that over and over, you know what's happening. That's pretty much it, man. So that's kind of what I wanted to, get you guys on. I know it's Good Friday, so I'll let you guys rock and roll. But I wanted you to just, hop on, every day just to kind of like keep the basics in there. Because we got to keep, this is something new to you guys. So we got to keep, until you, it's good to have these conversations because you say it away and Joey says it away. And Joey thinks completely different than you, right? But you guys will get the same answer at the end of it.
Right.
We're doing the same thing. But it all comes down to when it clicks for you. And that's why I like doing the lives and having live convos, because it's like, we can discuss it in 3-4 different ways till we get it right.
Yeah. And I see when you're talking about it, I get what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I'm on by myself and I'm trading and I'm looking at my charts and I'm like,
yeah.
I always like second guess myself and I'm like, okay, I'm on the 10 minute and the 4 minutes green and the 1 hour's green.
Hey, You got to
You know.
simplify your steps. That's all that's happening right now is that that's why we don't change information a lot. Right now, we
Right.
have to we need 4-hour RSIs up, 4-hour moons, 1-hour moons. That fucking simple. Once we get that part down, then we have, okay, now I'm trading. I need my 10-minute reset. The only step you're missing is going back to say, is my 1 hour still headed up? Perfect.
Yeah, recheck the 1 hour. Yeah,
And that's it. Right? And look
that's
at the
what I
value.
gotta do next time.
Yeah, the growth is when you're doing the check, seeing how the volume is playing. Is my volume rejecting earlier? Is this a weaker long than it looks? Then what happens is you then say to yourselves, you know what? I know this is going to go long, but I'm going to take the next level down entry. I'm going to go 2 down on the support because the volume isn't strong enough for me to be convinced. So I'm going to do a greedy entry. That's what we did at that trade the other day I called out. It was pushing and pushing, but I took the double level down. And it went
On
down
the Doge.
Yeah, and it went down further than that.
Yeah.
But we still hit our target because everything was lining up for a long. But when it was longing, I didn't put us at the entry point. I put us below because I know the market's weak.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. These are the things. These are the habits you build in your own head once you see it. Right? I can explain it 100 times, but it doesn't work until you like see it happening and you're like, oh, I need to get greedy here because there's no value. You know what I mean? And that's pretty much it. But that's why it's right now we're just repeating the same thing, right? We just got to get posting, right? We're getting some posts on there. We're getting some hours. We're getting some RSIs, right? The more people we get in and we start everybody starts coming back around, then more information. More information means more checks, right? We can check more. We can see the data, right? We can start seeing the market change, right? Then once that happens, you're like boom, 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 boom. You become a machine. Now it's no more emotions, no more feelings, just moon movement. Okay, reset. Oh yeah, I'm going here. I'm taking this greedy entry. Perfect set. Let go. Next one. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. You're just kind of rocking through the market. And then all of a sudden, after a while, a month or 6 weeks of that, all of a sudden it's like, man, these things they're jumping a lot higher than normal. Oh shit, I need to double my bag. Now you're doubling your bag, taking the same 30%. Now you're making twice as much profit with less risk.
Right.
And then you just keep rolling. You just keep building those blocks.
Yep.
But that comes with time, like I said.
Stacking them bricks.
Stacking the bricks. But that's why it's like, right now, it's going to take, 6 weeks to get out of, the thought of the bad habits.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that one thing. Oh, that's why it's good to take sticky notes. Boom, here's my rules. Boom, here's what I'm going to look at. Boom, right? And then when you're doing your trade,
Yeah, I
you're
just
sticky
wrote all
noting
that
it.
stuff down.